The stone moved. That was the first thing Cade noticed. A small slab of volcanic rock near the base of a collapsed arch. It shifted, just slightly, then went still again. He raised a fist. The squad stopped. Ren came up beside him, scanning left. Duno covered the right. Sarah and Oron held back, watching the ridge. Nobody spoke. That was the rule in old nesting ground. No loud noise, no sudden movement. The dragons who once lived here were gone. What stayed behind was unpredictable. Cade moved toward the arch alone. The squad hated when he did that. He did it anyway. He crouched low and looked into the gap between the collapsed stones. Two eyes looked back, bright gold, the color of afternoon light through a dusty window. They blinked once. Then a sound came out of the gap, not a roar, not a hiss. Something in between, like a kettle that had not decided what it wanted to be yet. The creature was small, smaller than Cade expected. Its scales were the color of old copper coins with a shine underneath, somewhere between orange and gold depending on how the light moved. Its wings were folded tight against its body. It had a tiny horn above each eye, not yet sharp. Its tail curled behind it and knocked against the stone with a rhythmic, agitated tap. It was not hurt. It was not scared. It was furious. Cade sat down, cross-legged, right there in the dirt. Behind him, he heard Ren exhale through her nose, the sound she made when she thought he was being an idiot but had decided not to say so yet. The baby dragon stared at him. He stared back. He did not reach forward. He did not make any sound. He just sat there, letting the creature decide what it wanted to do with the information that he existed. A minute passed, maybe two. Then it growled again, lower this time, and took one step forward out of the gap. Just one. It planted its front feet on the stone and looked at him with the focused intensity of something that had not yet learned what it could or could not destroy. Cade noticed it had a small cut above its left foreleg. Not deep. Old enough to be healing. It had been here a while. He reached slowly into his vest pocket. His hand came out with a standard-issue micro-helmet. It was meant for the squad's scouting drones, a protective shell no bigger than a large fist, with a scratched visor and the squad's unit number written in marker on the side. He had been carrying it for 3 weeks, waiting to find a drone that fit it. He held it out, not toward the dragon, just out, in the open, where it could be seen. The dragon looked at the helmet, then at Cade, then at the helmet again. Cade turned it slowly in his hand, letting the visor catch the light. The dragon took another step forward, then another. It stopped just in front of him, close enough that Cade could see the tiny ridges along its snout, the way its nostrils opened and closed as it read his smell. He stayed completely still. The dragon lowered its head, just slightly, and sniffed the helmet. Cade placed it gently on its head. It sat crooked. The visor covered one eye and left the other fully exposed. The dragon went very still. It looked down at its own reflection in the visor. It sneezed. The helmet slid sideways. Cade reached out and straightened it. The dragon did not move away. "Sir." Ren's voice was completely flat. "Did you just put a helmet on it?" "She looked like she needed one," Cade said. "You don't know it's a she." "She," Cade said again. A long pause from the squad. "Okay," said Duno, in the tone of someone writing something unusual in a report and trying to figure out how to spell it. Cade stood up slowly. He took a step back, then another. Then he turned and walked back toward the squad, and they continued the patrol, and nobody said anything else about it. They were halfway to base when Oron glanced back and stopped walking. "Cade," he said. Cade turned around. The dragon was behind them, 30 meters back, picking her way through the rocks with careful, deliberate steps. She had her head up. The crooked helmet was still on. She was not sneaking. She was not hiding. She was just following. Cade looked at her for a moment. Then he turned back around and kept walking. Ren fell into step beside him. "What's the plan?" "We'll see what she does at the perimeter." "And if she follows us inside the perimeter?" Cade thought about it. "We'll see what she does after that." Ren made a sound like someone swallowing several things they had decided not to say. They reached base as the last light left the ridgeline. Cade logged the patrol, filed a brief note about the old nesting site, and ate cold rations sitting on a supply crate outside his bunk. When he was done, he looked toward the camp entrance. The dragon was sitting there, still wearing the helmet, sitting straight, tail wrapped around her front feet, watching him with those gold eyes the way something watches when it has already made up its mind and is simply waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Cade looked at her for a long moment. Then he went to bed. She was still there in the morning. She had rearranged the perimeter sensors. Not broken them. Not moved them out of spite. She had physically lifted 3 sensor units from their posts during the night and reset them in a triangular pattern that covered the blind spot on the eastern approach. A blind spot that Duno had complained about 3 days ago and never fixed. Duno stood in front of the new arrangement with a handheld scanner running diagnostics, his face doing complicated things. "The coverage is better," he finally said. "I know," said Cade. "She moved military hardware." "I know." While we were sleeping, Cade looked at the dragon. She was sitting beside the rearranged sensors with the posture of someone who had done a job and was waiting to be acknowledged for it. The helmet was still on her head, slightly less crooked than before. At some point during the night, she had adjusted it herself. Ren crossed her arms. "I want it on record that I have concerns." "Noted," said Cade. "Duno, can you pull up the old dragon language files? The pre-contact archive." Duno looked up from his scanner. "You want to know what to call her?" "I want to know what she might call herself." Duno spent 20 minutes with the archive while the dragon watched him work with the patient attention of a student who already knew the answer. He finally held up a name. Lisha, Old Dravith word, means something like, the one who arrives before the fire. As in, the scout that warns the flight before a threat comes. Everyone looked at the dragon. She sneezed, which did not seem like a denial. "Lisha," Cade said. She turned her head toward him. "That's you," he said. She turned her head back toward the camp and walked past them all into the supply area, where she sat down next to Oron's equipment pile and began studying his gear with her nose. Ren stared after her. She understood that. "Seems like it," said Cade. She understood her name on the first try. First day of school. Kids do it all the time. "She is not a kid," said Ren. "She is a dragon." Both things can be true. The shadow fell on them without warning. It was enormous. It crossed the entire camp in under a second, and the temperature dropped by several degrees as it passed. Everyone looked up. Something very large and very old was descending from the ridge above them, wings open, moving with the slow purpose of something that had never in its life needed to hurry. Elder Vorin landed at the camp boundary. He was the color of old iron and blue storm clouds. His eyes were pale and sharp, and they swept the camp the way a general sweeps a battlefield, looking for weaknesses, counting problems. He folded his wings with a sound like heavy canvas settling, and he looked at Lisha. Then he looked at Cade. "She is not yours," he said. His voice was low and even, like a sound that had been the same for 100 years. Cade stood straight. "She followed us. We did not bring her. She is wearing your armor." Cade paused. He had not thought of it that way. It is a drone helmet. It was not doing anything useful. Its function does not matter. Vorin looked back at Lisha, who had not moved from her spot beside Oron's equipment pile. She was watching Vorin the way she watched everything, steady, measuring, decided. "You placed covering on her. In the old way of our kind, that is a gesture of protection, of claiming kin." Ren very quietly turned to look at Cade. Cade kept his face still. "I did not know that." "I believe you," said Vorin. "Humans rarely know what they are doing when they stumble into something significant." He paused. "The question is whether Lisha knew." Everyone looked at Lisha. Lisha looked back at them with an expression that communicated, as clearly as if she had spoken the words, that she was not going to answer that question. Vorin made a sound deep in his chest. Not a growl. Something older. A kin bond chosen by the young one cannot be broken by the elder. It is not our way. If she held still and allowed the gesture, she accepted it. He lowered his head slightly, looking at Cade directly now. "You now carry a responsibility you did not ask for." "What kind of responsibility?" Cade asked. "She will learn from you. Whatever you are, she will become some of it." He paused. "I find that unsettling." Cade nodded. "That's fair. What would make it less unsettling?" Vorin looked at him for a long time. The kind of look that measured something the other person could not see. "Prove you are worth learning from," Vorin said. He spread his wings and lifted, clearing the camp in a single motion, and was gone back over the ridge before any of them could say another word. The squad stood in silence. Oron broke it first. He looked down at Lisha, who had gone back to examining his gear. He crouched down next to her and studied the same piece of equipment she was looking at, a magnetic anchor spike, heavy and awkward. "She's right," he said. "It is in the wrong bag." He moved it to a different bag. Lisha watched him do it. Then she moved to the next piece of gear and looked at that one. Oron followed her. Ren rubbed her face with both hands. "This is happening," she said to no one in particular. "This is just happening now." Then the base alarms went off. 3 signals hit the board at once. Eastern Ridge, Northern Pass, and something Duno could not identify yet. A contact moving below the mineral fields, too slow for a vehicle, too large for a person. "Kreth," Duno called. 2 units minimum. Coming from the ridge with net launchers. Net launchers meant one thing on Dravith 9. They were not here for territory. They were here for the nesting ground. Cade was already moving. "Ren, take Duno, blind their targeting. Eastern approach, use the drone spread. Sarah, you and Oron cut off the northern pass. Stop those launchers before they get in range. Do not engage center. Let them commit to the ridgeline first." Ren pointed at Lisha. And her. Lisha was standing at Cade's left, watching him with those gold eyes, head slightly tilted, every part of her body pointed at him and waiting. "She stays with me," Cade said. He moved out. He did not run. That was the thing about Cade in a fight. He walked with purpose, which somehow arrived faster than running. He used the boulder field along the base of the eastern ridge, moving through cover, keeping his body low. Lisha moved beside him without being told. She matched his pace exactly. When he stopped, she stopped. When he pressed against a rock, she pressed against it too, her copper scales going dark in the shadow. Above them, the first Kreth unit crested the ridge. They were tall, gray-armored, moving in a practiced sweep formation. 6 of them on the eastern approach. They had the EMP nets loaded. Cade counted the distance to the nesting ground. They would be in range in under 4 minutes if nothing stopped them. Duno's voice came over the comm. "Drone spread is up. Targeting is degraded on their side. They are going to manual." Manual meant slower, not stopped. Cade signaled. 2 fingers pointed left, then a flat palm down. An old squad signal. Meant, hold, watch the left. He felt something warm beside him. Lisha was looking left. Her nostrils were working fast, pulling in information he could not sense. Her body went tight in a way that was completely different from her usual stillness. Then she turned to him, and he could not have explained why it worked. She looked left, then looked at him, then looked left again, like someone giving a direction. Cade tilted his head. He pulled up his scanner and pushed it carefully past the edge of the rock, low, scanning the angle Lisha had indicated. A 7th Kreth, separated from the group, moving along a gully that none of their sensors had flagged because the mineral concentration in the rock was scrambling the readings. Flanking position would have hit them from behind. Cade got on the comm Oron. "Gully position, 40 meters north of your mark. 1 contact." "I see him," said Oron. A pause. "How did you spot that?" "I had help." He looked at Lisha. She was watching him, waiting, still completely calm. Cade gave her a nod. She seemed to understand what it meant. They moved. The next 12 minutes were not clean. They rarely were. The Kreth on the ridge were well-trained, and they adjusted fast to the degraded targeting, pushing through the eastern approach with manual net positioning. 1 net almost caught the upper nesting site before Ren got Duno's drones on the launcher unit and collapsed the formation. Lisha did not fight. She was too young, too small, and she had no fire yet. But she was fast in ways that made no sense, cutting across terrain that should have slowed her down, appearing where Cade needed eyes, and then retreating before she could be targeted. She spotted a second hidden unit crouched behind a mineral shelf that would have flanked Sarah's position. She did it the same way, standing very still, reading the air, then looking at Cade with calm certainty until he followed her gaze and found what she had already found. The northern pass held. The eastern approach collapsed. The hidden units never made contact. Vorin came in from above when the Kreth tried to fall back, and that was the end of it. He landed 30 meters from Cade, and the ground shook with the weight of him. He looked over the battlefield. He looked at his nesting ground, intact, undamaged. He looked at the squad moving through the site, checking contacts, calling positions to each other without being told. Then he looked at Lisha. She was sitting beside Cade again, in that exact same posture she had worn at camp, straight, tail wrapped around her feet, watching everything. Vorin was quiet for a long moment. "You did not command her," he said to Cade. "It was not a question." "No," said Cade. "You did not hold her back either." "She would not have stayed back," Cade said honestly. Vorin looked at the northern pass where Oron and Sarah were dismantling a captured net launcher. He looked at Rin running diagnostics on the drone spread, talking Duno through a reload at the same time without missing a beat. He watched them move around each other with the easy confidence of people who had learned each other's patterns until those patterns fit. "Most who come to this world command," Vorin said. "They come with flags and rules and lists of what we are allowed to be." Cade waited. Vorin looked back at him. "You fight like you want everyone to make it home." "That's the whole plan," Cade said. "Every time." Another silence. Not uncomfortable. Then Vorin said, quietly, "The Kreth will come back. Larger." Cade looked at the ridge where the attack had come from. "I know," he said. Vorin spread his wings and lifted. But before he cleared the ridge, he looked down at Lisha one more time. What passed between them was too fast and too quiet for any human to read. But Lisha sat up a little straighter, and Cade noticed. General Orvik did not look angry. He looked tired, which in Cade's experience was worse. He was sitting behind a folding field desk in the command tent, and across from him stood a man in a clean gray suit who had the expression of someone who had recently discovered that the universe did not share his filing system. His name was Delegate Faro. He represented the Galactic Council's Frontier Affairs Division. He had arrived that morning on a ship that was too large for the landing pad and had complained about it. "The Dragon," said Faro, "is a protected non-combatant under Article 9 of the Species Conduct Charter. She cannot be present in a military camp. She cannot be bonded to a military unit. And she certainly cannot be deployed in a combat zone." Cade stood at ease and said nothing. Furthermore, Faro continued, finding a rhythm. The bond itself creates a legal complication. Under the same charter, if a military actor initiates a bonding gesture toward a protected species, that actor assumes custodial responsibility, which must be reviewed by a council panel before. "Who wrote Article 9? Cade asked. Faro stopped. "I beg your pardon." "Article 9. The Protected Non-Combatant Clause. Which species wrote it? Which council members drafted it? Was there any dragon representation in that process?" Faro's mouth opened, then closed. "Because," Cade continued, in the same flat, even tone, "from what I understand, the dragons of Dravith 9 have been asking the council for support against Kreth harvesting raids for 11 years. And the council has been filing those requests under ongoing review for 11 years. That process is ongoing. Yesterday," Cade said, "a Kreth force hit the eastern ridge with EMP nets and 7 armed units, moving directly toward the nesting ground. My squad stopped them. Lisha helped spot flanking units that our sensors missed. Elder Vorin is alive because we moved fast." He paused. "The council's ongoing review did not help with any of that." Faro looked at Orvik. Orvik looked at the tactical report on his desk. He had read it 3 times. "The bond," Faro said, regrouping. "The dragon must be taken to a neutral facility for species welfare assessment. Standard procedure when a wild specimen is." "She is not a wild specimen," Cade said. "She is Lisha. She chose the bond herself. Elder Vorin has confirmed that and has not contested it. The only people who want to remove her are people she has never met, using rules she was never asked about." Silence. Orvik put the report down. "Delegate Faro, I'm going to table the removal order pending field review." Faro stiffened. "General, the charter is clear." "The charter," said Orvik, "does not have a clause for what to do when a dragon independently bonds with a squad and then helps that squad prevent a harvesting raid." He looked at Cade. "Dismissed." Cade saluted and left. Outside the tent, the air smelled like hot rock and distant rain. Ren fell into step beside him the moment he cleared the entrance. "How bad?" she said. "They want to take her." "They can try," said Ren, in a tone that clarified she was not offering to help them. They found Lisha in the drone bay. She had not broken anything. She had simply walked in, looked at the launch queue displayed on the scheduling board, and reorganized it. The board now showed a different sequence. The second drone first, the fourth third, the first fourth. On the surface it looked random. Duno had been staring at it for the last hour. "It's not random," he said when they walked in. He pointed at the board. If you run the new sequence, it covers the detection gap during weather interference. She found a window we have been missing for 3 weeks. Cade looked at Lisha. She was sitting in front of the board, still studying it, already moving to the next problem. She understood the board, Cade said. She understood what the board was for, Duno corrected. That is different. That is, he searched for the word. That is someone who looks at a system and immediately finds what it is failing at. Ren crossed her arms, looking at Lisha. The council wants to put her in a welfare facility. Duno turned around very slowly. The council can. I told them, said Cade. He sat down on a crate near Lisha. She glanced at him, then went back to the board. He looked at the schedule she had built. Clean, efficient, no wasted passes. Faro used the word specimen. He said quietly, to no one in particular. Lisha's ear tilted. A small motion, like someone who had heard a word used wrong and was deciding whether to correct it. Ren looked at Cade. You handled it well in there. Cade shook his head. I just said true things and watched who flinched. Outside, the light on the ridge was changing. The kind of change that happened in the late afternoon on Dravith 9 when the upper winds shifted, when something was moving through the high passes from the far side of the planet. Sarah stepped into the bay doorway. Her face was reading the same thing everyone's face read when the news was large. Intelligence just came in, she said. Kreth fleet movement. They are staging something big. She paused. 36 hours out. Nobody spoke. Then Lisha stood up. She walked to the bay entrance and looked out at the ridge. She stood there for a long moment, reading the wind, reading the light, reading something none of them had the senses to find. Then she turned back to Cade and waited. Like she was ready. Like she had been ready since the first morning, she was still sitting at the entrance when he woke up. Vorin came at midnight. No wing noise, no shadow. He simply appeared at the camp boundary the way very old things sometimes did, as if distance was an arrangement they had long ago stopped being bound by. Cade was awake. He had not been able to sleep. He was sitting outside with a cold drink and the tactical map from the intelligence report, turning it over in his head for the 4th time. Lisha was beside him. She had been there since Sarah brought the news. Not asleep, not restless, just present. In the particular way she was present, fully there, quietly watching, as if she was keeping something steady. Vorin folded himself down at the edge of the firelight. For a while he said nothing. He looked at the map in Cade's hands, then at Lisha, then at the dark ridge above them. Then he said, Do you know what the nesting ground is? A protected site, Cade said. Old territory. It is a memory, Vorin said. Every ridge, every stone formation, every pattern carved into the deep rock, it is our history. Written in a language that does not exist in any of your databases. Things that happened before your alliance existed. Before most of the species in your council had left their first planet. He paused. If the Kreth take it, it does not become their territory. It becomes nothing. They do not read it. They do not preserve it. They harvest the mineral content from the stone and leave a hole. Cade looked at the map. At the outlined position of the Kreth fleet, staging beyond the far ridge. How many in their force? He asked. More than your alliance has positioned here, Vorin said. That is why they chose this window. They know your command is slow to respond. By the time a larger force is authorized and deployed, they will have what they came for. Then we stop them before that. Vorin looked at him. You do not have enough soldiers. We have you, Cade said. A pause. We have never fought alongside humans, Vorin said carefully, or any other species. We fight as dragons fight, each according to our own judgment. There is no common signal, no shared plan. In the last raid, your squad and I fought in the same place, but not together. Cade nodded slowly. He understood the problem. 2 forces with no common language fighting in the same space was not cooperation. It was dangerous overlap. Lisha talked to both sides, he said. Vorin went still. She spotted contacts for me. I do not know how she learned the signals. She just watched the squad for 2 days and understood them. She translated between us without us knowing she was doing it. Cade looked at Lisha. She is the common language. Lisha was watching Vorin, not waiting for approval. Something else. Something that looked like a question she had already decided the answer to, but was waiting to see if he had reached it yet. Vorin looked at his granddaughter for a long time. Then he looked back at Cade. I have watched your squad for 2 days as well, he said. I have watched how they move. They do not look to you for permission. They look to each other. He paused. Most commanding species give orders. Their soldiers wait for orders. There is always a gap between the order and the action where the wrong thing can happen. He tilted his head, slow and ancient. Your squad has no gap. Each one acts, and the others adjust, and the whole thing moves as if it decided before you commanded it. Kate almost smiled. We've been together a while. It is not time, Vorin said. It is trust. They trust you will make space for what they decide. And they trust each other to decide well. He looked at Lisha again. She noticed this on the first hour. I think that is why she held still for the helmet. Lisha did not look guilty. She looked patient, the way someone looks when a conversation is finally arriving at the point they have been waiting for. Vorin brought his gaze back to Cade. Full attention, the weight of something very old. I am asking you to lead the ground defense, he said. Not serve under your alliance command structure. Lead. The dragons of Dravith 9 will follow your signals through Lisha, and we will cover the ridge from above, and you will direct where. Cade kept his expression still. Your elders agreed to that. They agreed to let me decide, Vorin said. I have decided. Why me specifically? Vorin looked down at Lisha, sitting small and straight beside Cade's boot, her crooked helmet slightly tilted, her gold eyes steady. Because she decided on the first hour, he said quietly. And she has never been wrong. Cade set down the map. He stood up and walked to the bunk row and knocked twice on the support post, the squad signal for non-emergency assemble. Ren came out first, still half asleep. Then Duno, then Sarah, then Oron, who had apparently not been sleeping at all. Cade told them, clean. No extra words. Every hand went up before he finished the last sentence. Ren's went up first. They spent the rest of the night on the plan. Cade ran through every position, every gap in the terrain, every weakness in the approach corridors. Vorin answered questions about dragon flight patterns and altitude ranges with precise, unhurried detail. Duno built a shared signal system, simple shapes, easy to repeat, that Lisha could carry between dragon units and the squad in real time. Lisha sat at the center of the map on the ground and watched every word of it. She did not sleep. The sky began to change color above the ridge as the plan finished. First gray, then pale, then the first cold edge of Dravith 9's long dawn. Duno looked at his scanner and went quiet. Then he said, they are ahead of schedule. Above the far ridge, the Kreth fleet slid out of the dark and into the first light. Larger than the intelligence had said. Much larger. Ren looked at Cade. He was already watching the ridge with the focused, settled expression he wore when the plan had started, and the next thing was simply to do it. All right, he said. And the squad moved. The first hour was the hardest. The Kreth came in 3 waves, which was not what the intelligence had described. Wave 1 hit the northern pass with heavy ground units. Wave 2 pushed up the eastern approach under air cover from their fleet. Wave 3, and this was the part that hurt, came from below, through tunnel access points that the old geological surveys had listed as collapsed. They were not collapsed. Sarah found that out when the floor of the supply route cracked open and a Kreth unit pushed through directly behind Oron's position. She got him clear. He took a hit before she did. Not fatal. Enough to take him off the heavy weapons for the rest of the fight. He carried supply loads instead, which he did without being asked, limping and steady. Ren and Duno held the eastern approach with the drone spread and 2 relay positions that kept the Kreth air cover from locking targeting on the ridge. They lost 4 drones. They did not lose the ridge. Cade moved. He did not stay in one place. He was the thread that connected every part of it, reading the battle the way he read terrain. Constantly, in pieces, building the whole picture from what each piece told him. He gave signals. Simple ones. The shapes Duno had built into the plan. And Lisha carried them. She moved through the battle the way light moves. She was where she was needed before anyone had time to decide where to send her. She went from Cade to a dragon unit holding the far ridge and showed them Ren's position, a shape made with her body, a signal they had practiced once the night before. The dragons adjusted. The gap that was about to become a problem closed. She went from the northern pass back to Cade with information about unit depth that none of their sensors were reading. Not words, not sounds, just positioning, standing where she had seen the threat, and showing him with her body the direction and distance the way a hunting dog marks game. He read her immediately, adjusted the call to Sarah, and the tunnel threat that was forming underneath was cut off before it connected with the main push. She could not breathe fire. She was too small to hold a line. But she was the signal, the living translation between dragon flight patterns above and human squad movement below. And without her, the two forces would have been sharing a battlefield instead of fighting on one. The critical moment came at the archive chamber entrance. The Kreth knew where it was. They had been navigating toward it for the full battle, using the pressure of each wave to push the defenders away from the center. It was working. The chamber entrance was 60 meters away, and there were two Kreth units pushing toward it with no dragon fire reaching the angle, and Ren and Duno too far committed on the ridge to pull back. Cade looked at Lisha. She was already looking at him. He gave her one signal, a single flat hand pressed down. Hold. Then he opened the comm. Vorin. Archive approach. Center direct. Vorin's voice came back, low, not hurried. The angle is blocked by your ridge position. Lisha will show you the gap, Cade said. A pause. Very brief. Center, Vorin said. Lisha moved. She went up the eastern face of the rock at a speed that seemed impossible for something her size, found Vorin's position on the upper air, and put herself in his line of sight. And then, precisely, deliberately, using the shape system she had helped build, she showed him where Cade had opened the gap. Vorin banked. He came in low and fast, and the Kreth units at the archive entrance had approximately 4 seconds between seeing the shadow and understanding what it meant. The archive chamber was intact. When it was over, the battlefield was quiet in the way battlefields went quiet. Not peaceful, not clean, but done. The Kreth fleet pulled back. The ground units retreated or were taken. Vorin circled once above the nesting ground and landed near the archive entrance and stayed there. Oron was sitting with his back against a supply case, letting Sarah work on his leg, saying nothing and eating a ration bar with the resigned patience of a man who knew he was going to be in medical for a week. Ren sat down on a rock and put her head in her hands for 30 seconds. Then she lifted her head, looked at Duno, and said, "Good coverage on the ridge." Duno said, "You held the relay positions." Neither of them mentioned how close it was. Cade was standing at the archive entrance when General Orvik landed. Not in a shuttle. Orvik had taken a fast transport himself, which told Cade the general had been watching the battle from orbit and had decided he needed to see the ground. He walked across the nesting ground slowly, reading it. He saw the squad, scattered, tired, functional. He saw Vorin near the archive. He saw the landscape of a battle that had been won by something that was not in any of his tactical models. Then he saw Lisha. She was sitting in the middle of the squad's position, not beside Cade this time. In the center of all of them, equidistant from Ren, Oron, Sarah, and Duno, each of whom had unconsciously arranged themselves around her the way the squad arranged around a rally point. Her helmet was on. It was the same crooked drone helmet from the first day, and it was battered now, scratched from 2 days of combat movement. But it was on her head, and she was sitting straight, and she was watching Orvik approach with the same gold eyes that had watched Cade from under the collapsed arch 3 days ago. Measuring. Deciding. Orvik stopped in front of Cade. He looked at the tactical report on his tablet. He looked at the squad. He looked at Lisha. "The council is going to have questions," he said. Cade was quiet for a moment. He looked at Lisha, at the scratched helmet, at the steady eyes, at the way the squad had settled around her without noticing they had done it. "Tell them she is part of the squad," he said. Formally. Orvik looked at him. On what grounds? Cade did not answer right away. He thought about the first day, and the way she had held still. He thought about the sensors she had rearranged. He thought about the flanking unit she had found before any scanner caught it. He thought about the archive entrance, and Vorin banking through a gap that only she had known how to show him. "She earned it," he said. Orvik was quiet for a long time. He looked at Lisha again. She looked back at him the way she had looked at everything since the first morning. Patient, present, already past the question. He reached into his kit and pulled out a unit helmet. Standard issue, properly sized this time, fitted to the measurements Duno had logged during the planning session the night before without telling anyone why. He had guessed right. The helmet fit. Cade took it and crouched down in front of Lisha. He placed it on her head. It sat straight, solid, stamped on the side with the squad's unit emblem. Lisha went very still. She looked down at the visor, the same way she had looked at the crooked drone helmet 3 days ago. Her reflection looked back at her, a small copper-scaled dragon with a proper fitted helmet, sitting in the middle of a human squad on a battlefield where an archive full of ancient memory was still standing. She sneezed. Cade reached out and made sure the helmet was secure. It did not need adjusting this time, but he checked anyway. Lisha looked up at him. He looked back. 3 days. 1 helmet. Everything that came after. He straightened up. The squad was watching. Vorin was watching from the archive entrance. Even Orvik had stopped moving. Lisha turned, looked at each member of the squad in turn, Ren, Duno, Sarah, Oron. With the same gold attention, she gave everything. Then she turned back forward, tucked her tail around her feet, and sat at ease. She had never looked more like herself.